stressing yourself out holding all those cameras. You good?
Right, I'm good.
You can hear what I'm saying?
I can.
You good?
Can you hear him?
You're a multitasker now.
Oh, I can do anything.
All right. So I want to put this stuff up first, the eyes. The eyes are a tremendous window to the nervous system, and this is going back. We're going to look at what we saw on Monday 3 weeks ago, and what we're seeing here Friday, the last day. So this is what we saw on the Monday coming in. If you remember, you were looking at the black screen, and the little dot was going back and forth, and we're recording all the eye movements, which we'll see. So here's the deal. This was your eyes going left, right, and so on. You see the blue line is the dot, nice and smooth, and the green line with all the red marks is your eyes. So if you remember, each one of these marks or kind of bumps right here is your eyes coming off that target. And very, very stressful for the brain. The brain just simply wasn't allowing you to hold your eyes on a target, moving back and forth. And as we got a little bit faster, these things you can see clearly just broke down. Nothing even resembles these blue peaks anymore. And we're going to show the video with that, but here we go. So this is the slowest speed. If you just watch the eyes just simply trying to do this, moving to the left, you see the constant shaking or kind of twitching or oscillation of the eyes, we call it. Going back to the right, you just see this constant jumping of the eyes. You're following the target, but the eyes are constantly jumping around that target. Not a good place to be because very stressful for the nervous system. It just initiates these fight or flight responses, and then you really can't control your kind of emotional output, thought output, movement output, etc. And then as we get faster, you're going to see this is the middle speed. This is your eyes just simply trying to move to the right. And as they go back left, they get these big jumps. So your eyes are constantly falling off that target trying to get back on it. So I think you get the point with that. And you're doing a lot of blinking because your brain is trying to reset the visual field. So if we just go to today, and this is after 3 weeks of working out the brain and the eyes, but even in the midst of all that, if you just simply look at the graph here, so this is today, the slowest speed. If you just look at this graph right here, that picture's worth 1,000 words. We don't even need to look at the video to show that this is light years ahead of where it was. These are blinks. These are perfectly normal. A couple of little bumps here and there, but the fact is those big macro movements are gone. We have some micro movements now, but if I just hit play, watch the integrity of these movements now compared to what we just saw 3 weeks ago. Night and day, absolute night and day. It doesn't take a skilled clinician to see what's going on there. So a little hesitation, little bumps here and there along the road, but you're staying on the target. Here's a blink right here. But notice even through the whole thing, only 2 blinks through the entire exercise, where when you did it before, there was probably 15 or 20 because the brain gets so confused.
And because they're not jumpy anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what that is less stress on the brain. The deal is when your brain is stressed, be it physical stress or psychological stress, your frontal lobes, which are more human brain, basically goes offline. And that, just think about it. Anytime you're stressed, you don't really make good decisions. You're going on pure instinct, drive, desire, impulse, basically. So if our front brain is getting shut off from constant stress responses from our visual environment, that's a bad place to be. It's very common after, concussions, head injuries, things like that. They could be developmental in nature, but yours was very likely due to, some potential head traumas. But these look really, really good. If we go to the faster speed, still look really good. We've got one little pop off here, but for the most part, again, moving faster, just watch these things. They're staying with the target. They're not stressed out. You don't see that dire stress in the eyes that you did going on initially. And for just comparison's sake, I know you all see this, but just watch the integrity of these things compared to what we just saw. It really is just night and day.
Wow, it is.
So that shows you can change these critical inputs. 70% of learning is through the eyes. So if our eyes are constantly in a hostile environment like this, learning is not going to happen. We don't like reading anymore. We can't interact with people socially and otherwise because the brain just simply can't do that. It's in constant fight or flight primitive mode. And that's really where it's important for others to understand that because we're always around people, and the fact is somebody might look at you and say, okay, there's nothing wrong with your brain because I see you, and nothing's hanging out of your head. You didn't have a big hammer to the head with a big hole in it. We see lots of people with those types of brain injuries where you can physically see the brain the head where it was injured. But a lot of people will look at concussion, post-concussion and say, this is, I don't understand why this is happening. Why are people getting angry? Why are they not remembering? Why are they doing all these things? They can't regulate their emotions, et cetera, et cetera. This is all part of concussion and post-concussion syndrome. So, it's critically important for everybody around that individual to understand what's going on so that they can adapt to it, so that they can walk away from, potential conflict before it arises because, in essence, when that brain is stressed, there is no control over emotional regulation. You're just kind of going, it's like, poking the sleeping dog, so to speak, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So I want to show you that. Wanted to show you that. Now I'm going to show you the up and down version of that. Same deal. If you look at the eyes going up and down, again, just all of these interruptions, what we call intrusive saccades. So basically, as they start going up, you're going to see this pop, pop. Again, these movements just keep happening in the middle of the smooth movement. So you have two types of movements happening. You have the smooth movement that should be happening, and then you have these fast intrusive movements that come into it. So that's the slowest speed, the middle speed, and the fastest speed. At the fastest speed, there's really hardly any smooth pursuit at all. The eyes are just being kind of thrown up and down. And you can see how taxing that is. And also, too, I didn't even talk to the fact, when your eyes are inefficient like that, they also burn through energy like crazy. Your eyes and your brain use about 35% of the sugar and oxygen that we take in. So if these systems are injured and not working the way they should, what happens is you might be burning through 50 or 60% of your calories and resources.
Wow.
So with that, there's just a shutdown, a complete fatigue shutdown. And that could be, shut down as in I can't do anymore, I need to go to sleep, or that could be shut down as in seizure-like activity. That could be shut down in many different ways for people. But the fact is, those systems, the tank is out of gas when you get to these points, when you're trying to navigate your day doing simple, basic things. So that was then. This is now. I want to hit the wrong one. So this is today on that same test. So look at the ups and downs. Same thing. We see the graph out here. There's one interruption there, but just watch the quality of the movement. So you can actually see them slowly going down and slowly going up. There's some interruptive or intrusive movements there, but they're not nearly as big as they were. You can actually keep your eyes on that target now. Same thing throughout. Middle speed. These look really, really good. So up and down, looks good.
That's amazing.
Looks good. And again, you're not getting the consistent blinking. You're not getting your pupils going in and out, in and out, in and out, being stressed.
Is that the pupil size change is related to stress level?
Related to stress level, in this case, the pupils were actually very tiny during this test, and that's more medication related, because she took medication right before, I believe.
I took it that morning. I was asking if, in addition to my medication, if that exhaustion, like that stress, can make that even worse. Because there's times that I take my medication and they're just, like, my pupils are gone.
Right, and there's a point too, fight or flight responses causes pupils to get bigger, relaxation responses causes pupils to get smaller. So sympathetic, big, parasympathetic, small. So if you are in constant fight or flight mode, there's a point where that system just crashes and now you are in parasympathetic mode because you have no choice. You just bottomed out, completely bottomed out. So when people are in that chronic fight or flight, stressed and tired mode, then there's a point where it's now stressed and, as opposed to stressed and wired, it becomes more stressed and tired. So you just crash and you can't help but be in that relaxation response because you've been forced into it, right? That's why we're doing a lot of things with relaxation response, be it the electrical stimulation, the whole body vibration, other vibration, gargling, breathing, anything to activate that response so we can shut down those chronic fight or flight responses. And with that, your brain now opens up. Your brain is able to better make decisions, focus, pay attention, all those good things. And think about it with the metronome that we'll see. You were initially doing, 50 or 100 repetitions. Now you're at what? 600?
500, yeah.
500, 600 per set. So we went from a couple of hundred a day to now a couple of thousand a day, with better and better and better scores. So not only is your brain able to tolerate more, it's able to tolerate more and do better at the same time, because now you have these higher human cognitive capacities back online. But the fact is, once the brain gets stressed, be it an external stress or an internal stress, that front brain shuts off again. Okay? And that's the deal. The more our brain gets stressed, either due to stressors out there, everybody has stressors with, work, finances, relationships, you name it. So the more we can limit the external stressors like that, we're in a unique situation with COVID, but home circumstances, we need to minimize stressors there. Internal stressors, we need to minimize those as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, eating better, moving better, thinking better, those things are all going to minimize those stressors. So we have to attack it from multiple angles, and that's why it's important for everybody around you to understand how important it is to minimize the stressors. And that could be anything, that could be just really understanding that there is a legitimate physiological reason for why this is happening, and why you've been going through what you've been going through. So these things look really good, really, really good. I want to show you this. This was pretty cool. You did have a third nerve injury at some point, correct? Is that right? You had an eye nerve injury or no? Okay. For some reason,
Not that I know of.
There was a interesting finding on the fast eye movements. Let me go back here. So fast eye movements are controlled by a completely different part of the brain. What happens here is there's the little dot here, and then it moves over there, and it jumps over there, and it jumps over there, very random side to side. So graphically, here's the dot, not moving fast to the right, not moving fast to the left, not moving fast to the right. So here's the deal. If the dot's not moving and it moves fast, there should only be one, like a right angle, because it's moving and it stops. Well, here's what happens. The dot moves to the right, your eyes move to the right, stop, go back to the left, move back to the right, and finally get there at some point. And then they move back to the left just fine. Here they move to the right and they actually overshoot and come back. So a lot of stuff going on. Here they move before they're supposed to. So very inconsistent. You just look at these graphs, your graphs don't follow the blue ones very, very well. And that's consistent throughout. Your eyes are moving before they're supposed to, moving before they're supposed to, not even getting to the target. We're seeing a hump here instead of a right angle. So really just very, very poor fast movements. And fast eye movements are controlled by the frontal brain, the front of the brain. If I want to move my eyes quick to the left, it's because my right front brain tells them to do that, and vice versa. So we just see really poor frontal lobe control because of these types of movements. Also, the speed of these movements was very slow, meaning if you, right here, the dot moves, your brain gets a signal, and then your eyes move. We can measure that space. The space that we measured with you is as high as 275 milliseconds. It should be under 200. Okay, so you're almost, if we looked at it, probably 35-40% slowing of movement. So here we go to today, and what I want to show you with this, let's see here. You can't see the dot, but you're going to see your eyes doing a bunch of things. Even when they're sitting still, they're moving. Then they're going to move to the left here, but it takes them a couple of times to get there. They barely get to the right. Here they go very slow to the right instead of fast. And again, look at the pupils, in and out, because the system is stressed. So if we just look at that now, take that to today, repeat. So here, this is roughly what these should look like. So dot moves, your eyes move, dot moves, your eyes move. That's a blink. Dot moves, your eyes move, dot moves, your eyes move.
Wow.
This is really what it should look like. Now just look at the integrity of this, to the right, to the left, left, and so on. So there's just a lot less struggle in this, as with any of the others. Not perfect, but getting there. Even when they're still, they're moving, but they're not moving as much when they're sitting still. And the deal is there's no what we call anticipatory movements. Your eyes are no longer moving before the dot moves. Because before, the brain was so confused that it's just trying to get there because it realizes at some point that thing's going to go. But here now your brain is actually waiting for it, taking the cue, and then moving. So this is better rapid decision making, impulse control, all of that stuff better, and we can see it right through this right here.
So, Dr. Trayford,
Yeah.
Are there some of the exercises that Misty can do at home that will continue to improve,
Absolutely.
maintain this?
Yep, absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. We've got them printed up. So if I hide this now here too, look at these numbers now. Your highest number now is 221 milliseconds. Your highest was 275. Remember I told you normal was under 200. So this is really negligible at this point. We're talking about maybe 5%, 10% max reduction in that speed or initiation of movement. So those frontal lobes are more efficient now. Your more human functioning frontal brain is more online now. That is huge, 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 huge. It's not just about eye movements, it's about everything behind those eye movements, because the part of the brain that moves those eyes quick to the left or to the right is the same part of the brain that controls executive function, decision making, impulse control, all of these things that we measured on day one. Sound good? Look at these two optokinetic reflexes. Remember all the balls on the screen go in one direction and the other?
Yeah.
So for the most part to the left you had a fairly decent response, to about the halfway point, and then it goes away. We should see this saw blade type of thing where the eyes go fast, slow, fast, slow, fast, slow. And we should see this type of deal where the eyes do this. They go slow, fast, slow, fast, slow, fast, like that. So they're doing it about halfway through, and about this point it just kind of stops, and then the eyes start kind of shaking side to side. So now the eyes are just kind of getting lost in all of those balls moving across the screen and not even doing the reflex. This is a reflex. By the time we're 2 years old, this thing should be solid. It's often disrupted in head injuries. If we go to the right now, there's hardly any response at all. Look at that. It's just like a jagged, squiggly line. There's really not much reflex happening at all beyond the initial. The eyes are just trying to figure out what to do. You see them just kind of shaking, almost tremor-like or seizure-like. Very, very different than this. I want to show you this because today we're seeing much more of what we should be seeing. This is a pretty much a classic textbook optokinetic response. So this is what the eyes should be doing. So this slow, fast, slow, fast, slow, fast. And watch, when we get right about here, this is where it finally kicks in and you have a perfect response. This is what they should be doing, just like that. And that's to mitigate any movement around you. So if you're in the supermarket and things are moving, or if you're in a car and things are moving past you, if you don't have that reflex, your brain gets super confused. That's why we have that reflex. So when
What's
your
that
brain,
called?
It's called an optokinetic reflex. So anytime there's movement, either us moving through the environment or the environment moving around us, we have to activate that response. We don't know about it, it happens, we shouldn't feel it. But when that response goes away or is poor, what happens is people can get all kinds of physical symptoms, balance, dizziness, all kinds of issues, but also cognitive, psychological. People get angry, they get upset, they don't know what's going on because the brain is being disrupted and stressed out. So that's to the left and to the right. It starts off good, and there was a bunch of blinking right there, and then continues good. But you remember before you had no response to the right at all. And here we go. We start to see it, and then there's a little bit of interruption there, and then right here. It kicks into a perfect, full-on response right here. Gets tired at the end a little bit, but it's there. The fact is it's there. It's not gone completely. The up and down version of that, all the balls passing, there was zero response going down. You see more of kind of just a wavy line here. And then going up was a little bit of a response. I want to show you today. So going down, we've got that saw blade right there. That's exactly what we want to see, is just that constant popping of the eyes upwards. So where you had no reflexes in certain cases before, they're back now. And that's good because that leads to a more human-like brain, right? Not saying you weren't human, but you get where I'm coming from. We get less and less human when we have, and I say, when I say human, I'm talking about, evolved cognitive function. We get less and less human-like when, when we have disruptions in these kinds of reflexes, disruptions in balance systems, disruptions in all of these things that we're looking at. So this is pretty cool. And they've equated these things, moving the eyes fast, optokinetic reflexes, they've equated these and they show the direct correlation between them and certain aspects of cognitive ability. So as these get better, the cognitive functions get better. And when I say cognitive function, again, self-regulation, impulse control, all of that stuff. This is where people start saying, wow, I can actually pick up a book now and start reading again. Okay.
I'm so excited.
Because even, when you're reading, it's sort of, you're moving slow to the right, fast to the left. There's some optokinetic responses in there. It's all of this stuff together. But if you can't track an object because your eyes are, doing that kind of thing, if you can't move your eyes fast reliably and you go past the beginning of the line, you're going to have to read something 15 times before it makes any sense. Now it's going to be a lot easier. I would be incredibly surprised if you didn't have a much, much, much easier time reading. But at some point you will when you continue these exercises. So that's the eyes right there. The balance was poor to begin with and still remains as such. But the fact is, we were working against the tide today because the back pain and the antalgia. So you had the lean in the back. So these are largely unreliable numbers right now. But the fact is, we know your balance has significant challenges. But the fact that you've been on 2 feet these entire 3 weeks doing everything you've been doing is a testament to your ability to, to charge through a lot of this in the long run. So, you'll get there. It's just constantly keeping at it. If you didn't have the back pain today, I would imagine you'd be at least in the 50th percentile or so, because you've been doing so well with everything we've been throwing at you.
I've been, like, I walk better.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, she's from behind, she does like
Even
walk
just the
better.
posture, just being in that kind of mode all the time. It's just a naturally
Yeah,
more
just
erect,
stand up
non-forced
straight.
posture. So the metronome here, motor timing, what we call temporal processing, your brain's ability to take information and do something with it. So you're hearing sounds and you're turning those sounds into body movements, and we can record all of those body movements. If you recall initially, you weren't too bad. You were just into a below average timing category with your scores, roughly about 78 milliseconds away from zero across all exercises. This has everything to do, again, impulse control, attention, self-regulation. Critically important to understand that this is so much more than clapping. This is exercising the parts of the brain that help you pay attention and focus and get things done. So you were right there in the below average timing category. You had about 3/4 of the time you were hitting before the beat, so 77% of the time your brain is making you hit before the beat, even though you feel it's on the beat. And those are the big numbers right there. 12% of the time you had a perfect score, so that's not too bad for an entry-level initial test. We fast forward to today, your overall average now is 36.2 milliseconds, which puts you in well into the above average timing category. So you jump from well below average to well above average across all exercises. But when we look at percentage improvement in your timing abilities, 53% improvement in timing from then until now. So that's a big jump, 53% in just 3 weeks right there. Now look at this, you doubled your percent, and this is without any feedback whatsoever. So the training happens with feedback, the testing happens without feedback. So, the training is guided through visual and sound-based feedback, but the tests have nothing. So it's just you and the beat, you and the beat, you and the beat. So here we go, looking at, initially there was 12% perfect score without any feedback. Now overall you're about 1/4 of the time, about 25% perfect score without any feedback. And you went down from 77% before the beat to about 71%. So not a huge jump there, it's just your brain's tendency, it likes to, get ahead of itself. That's how most of us are. But we need some work to do there. There are metronome home units there in the ballpark, probably about 600 or so. Denise can get you info on those. So for down the line, it's a really good way to continue the progress. The good thing, the beauty of whether it's eye movements or balance or motor timing mechanisms, it's not like lifting weights where you put the weights down and you lose your gains, okay? And this is not to say don't do anything.
Right.
This is to say that even if you went cold turkey on something like this, especially the motor timing, unless you have another bump to the head or something like that, these numbers should stay pretty well where they're at. We've tested people 6 months, a year after the fact without having done any at home, and these numbers persist, which is good. So these are more permanent improvements versus, gains being made with lifting weights.
I would love to do it at home.
And how does this particular one impact behavior and cognition?
Yeah, it's when you look at, so when we first started, we were doing very small sets, about 50 repetitions, 100 repetitions per set. So there's no level of what we call attending over time. It's pretty easy to hit something 50 times. For some, I mean, in the beginning, that was not easy for you. We needed to build very slowly. But now we're at the point we're doing 500, 550 or so repetitions per set multiple times per day. So, tapping into 1,500, 2,000 repetitions a day as opposed to 300 or so repetitions a day. Now we're in the area of what we call attending over time, which is exercising our brain's ability to perform simple attention, just attend to one object. Simple
Like
attention is at the root of everything.
ADHD, ADD stuff.
And if you look, there's books out there, Biology of Desire by Lewis. It's a big addiction book, very popular in the addictions world, but he talks about a lot of these mechanisms. Him and others talk about simple attention and self-regulation as far as the brain are concerned. When I say self-regulation, regulating emotional output, they are one in the same. It's the same part of the brain that does those things. So as we're exercising this, we're exercising self-regulation. I tell people all the time, they start out with this tool, they hate it. It's their worst enemy. And then as the weeks go on, you were an anomaly. You loved it off the bat, so you're glutton for punishment, so to speak. But what happens is people usually hate it in the beginning because it goes against everything that their brain is wanting to do, pay attention and all of that. But by the end of the week, they realize how powerful it's been for them to be able to garner that focus, attention, impulse control. Impulse control is a big factor here too. But they're all very closely related in the brain. The right prefrontal cortex houses a lot of those abilities and activities, and that's what this does, is exercises that area. Yeah.
Thanks.
So that's that right there. Huge gains, huge gains. Also too, there were some differences. Side to side, you were quite a bit slower on your left-sided timing versus the right, just possibly due to more right brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
And you were today pretty well on, 41 milliseconds compared to 38 milliseconds. So
Nice.
right there. So left side and right side are much more equal. So it's not just about improving function. It's also about kind of bridging the gap between dysfunction from side to side.
Yeah, a lot of stuff has gotten easier on my left side, where all my movements were real jerky and.
Absolutely. The EEG is the only thing, and I want you to look at this through the set of lenses. This is not worse or better. When we're looking at electrical output of the brain, this stuff changes moment to moment. We should see certain patterns that persist, but depending on, if you had coffee, if you had a bad night's sleep, if you had an argument with somebody, if you did, if you're just perseverating or thinking about something, whatever, it's going to change your brainwave activity. So here, this is going back 3 weeks ago. You had lots of this theta brainwave activity. You had a bunch of this slow delta activity on the left side of the brain. And if we look today, it's going to look like it's magnified a bit. You have more of the red stuff.
I was
But
falling asleep. I was so
And
tired.
the fact is, the last 2 nights you've slept like junk. So
Yeah.
that's what that's all about. The more important thing I want to show you here is this point right here. Here, here, and here. This point they call FZ is related to the anterior cingulate. If you've ever heard of the anterior cingulate, it's really big in the mental health world. The anterior cingulate has a lot to do with what these things I'm talking about, self-regulation. I pulled up a little page right here. You can just Google it, Wikipedia and others. But the anterior cingulate cortex has so much to do with impulse control, self-regulation, decision-making, things like that. So when our brain is stressed through all of these things I've mentioned, that anterior cingulate doesn't work. And what happens here is we're seeing now heightened activity in this anterior cingulate region, which means even though it's more than typical activity, what it's likely showing is a shift in that area, kind of waking up a bit, because that area hasn't been serving you well over time. So that's pretty darn cool. It's an amazing area of the brain, one of the biggest areas as far as research goes, because it does so much. And it also connects your left and right hemispheres, partly. So it has a lot to do with being able to balance, critical thinking versus big picture versus, left brain, right brain stuff. But right there, we're just seeing some activity there, which is, I look at that as a big positive, that there's just some shifting and kind of waking up that areas. It's like a teenager driving a car for the first time. They've never done it before, so they're going to slam on the gas and they're going to be kind of sloppy doing it, but at least they're doing it. They never did it before, but now they're doing it. So what's happening is, this area is coming online, and with that, it doesn't know what to do with itself. So it's just kind of, there's a lot of activity there. And it's very isolated. I mean, we see it very clearly on those 3 points, very isolated.
What part does the corpus callosum play here?
The corpus callosum is really just the conduit or the bridge. A lot of tracks go from one side of the brain to the other. This is at the front part of the corpus callosum, and has some activities in directing traffic from left to right brain as well. But corpus callosum, we know for sure, as we saw initially with the timing tests and others, there was no doubt some injury. Whenever you have whiplash injuries or other types of injuries, that corpus callosum gets kind of torn and shifted, and that's where a lot of people will have challenges with a lot of cross-body activities like the figure eights, and, the metronome and things like that.
It's actually documented by Ed Riley at UC San Diego when she was like 10.
Gotcha.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Right,
corpus
right.
callosum. That was the whole,
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing, as far we see that kind of stuff all the time, where left side does not know the right side at all, because they have very little interhemispheric communication, because that bridge is missing a lot of boards, But in your case, we're really not seeing much of that. So a lot of that is probably healed, and now we're just kind of, going steps above that.
That's great.
Because you do have a lot of good, reference between left and right. Certainly more now than you did a couple of weeks ago, but even a couple of weeks ago, it was pretty darn good. Yeah. So that's the nutshell on all this. What kind of questions you got? And I understand we're always